Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of DDJ's Inferno. Today we're going to be talking with Brian Martinez of Honey Badger Radio. Welcome, Brian. Let everybody know a little bit about you. So for those people who don't know who you are or anything about Honey Badger Radio, just let everybody know who you are and what's going on.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob. So my name is Brian Martinez. I am a producer at Honey Badger Radio. Honey Badger Radio is a website, and I guess it's not just a YouTube channel, but we are a channel that's on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Restream, all kinds of places on the internet. We primarily do topics related to gender and men's issues in particular. We are also an MRA group for if you want to get with a term that people can easily understand and relate to. And that's basically what we do. We talk about men's issues. We talk about gender politics, that kind of thing.
Nice. And I know there's a lot of people in Honey Badger. Who all is in Honey Badger right now? Like, who's the current roster of people?
Okay, so yeah, they're like the Avengers. They keep changing members around, but it's still run by Allison Tiemann. She's the head badger in charge. And I am myself. I'm a producer. I host most of the live shows. We have Hannah Wallen, who's been there since the beginning as well. Karen Strawn is still a part of the team, and she appears on some shows, although Karen's been doing a lot more real life work. So making appearances, going on AM radio, things like that, to talk to people. Dr. Ranamercam, and then we have some, other players that are smaller, Mike J, Anna Cherry, Prim Reaper, Lauren Brooks occasionally comes on. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, we have people who come and go, occasionally that are allied with us or reserve members, if you will, but those are the main people.
Gotcha. All right. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today was the International Conference on Men's Issues. I'm going to go ahead and throw that up on the screen here a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and kind of talk about that a little bit? I'm just going to toss it up here.
Sure, no problem.
So, let me toss up a different screen here. Look at my short bus radio. All right, let's try that again. All right, got a boomer moment there. All right, go for it.
Yeah. So the International Conference on Men's Issues. This is like an annual conference that we've had in different parts of the world. I think we started doing it in 2014. The first one was in Detroit, Michigan. And I wasn't around for that, but we had some great guests. Stefan Molyneux from Freedom Radio was there. Paul Elam, Dean Esme. A lot of great MRAs at the time. Dean Esme. And then we took a break in 2015, and we weren't able to do it. And then after that, we've had them in London, or in the UK. We've had one in Australia in 2017, and then last year we had another one in the UK. And I thought, well, it's about time we bring this back to the United States, because we've been going on these crazy long flights, and there's also a lot of people over here in the land of the free that would like to check out, and I think would benefit from such a conference. They might need to know about these topics, and being that the first one we ever did was in Detroit. I thought, well, why not Chicago? It's got one of the busiest airports in the world. It's right in the middle of the country. It's easy to get to. So we set it up, and then to go take it a step further, the Badgers, we're the ones organizing it, whereas before it's been organized by Justice for Men and Boys, which is a small political party in the UK, or it's been organized by A Voice for Men. The Honey Badgers wanted to organize it this time and make it a bit of a bigger conversation. And I think this is what makes this year's conference more crucial than in the past, because in the past, the conferences have just been with, academics and YouTubers and commentators and philosophers discussing men's issues in a kind of vacuum, in a bubble of men's issues, as though they are something that it's definitely a topic worth discussing, but somehow exists and is not connected to other issues that we're currently, discussing in today's political climate. And okay. We are of the belief that men's issues are intrinsically linked to all these other issues that people are talking about, whether you're talking about, social justice warriors in politics, whether you're talking about the Trump presidency, whether you're talking about the LGBTQ lobby, the Black Lives Matter, all those things that people are discussing, issues of race, issues of religion, issues of nationalism, etc. There is a link, and it's men's issues. There's the men's issues are it's like the underlying solution that no one wants to look at. So what we did was this year's conference is actually going to have people that are not MRAs specifically. We're going to have speakers that are, either they talk about cultural issues, or they talk politics, or whether they're on the right or they're libertarian or conservative or whatever. Even people on the left, if they want to come, although we never get any.
Well, let's talk about some of them real quick, because I noticed on the website I'm on the list of presenters right now, and it looks like you've got Tommy Sotomayor.
Yep.
You have Chris Coles. Looks like I can't even pronounce this guy's name. I'm not even going to destroy it. It looks like
Elon Srolovics. I can tell a little bit about them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people know who Tommy Sotomayor is, but go ahead and just do a little bit. I mean, there's a little brief bio people can look at.
Yeah, you guys can look it up. But like some of these other guys that are further down, they've been at just about every man's conference. Steven Svoboda, Paul Elam, Mike Buchanan. Those guys are, always great. But these guys, some of these people are, they've never been to one of these. So Tommy Sotomayor is a man that mainly talks about problems within the Black community. And he has, little by little, if you watch his videos from the beginning, he has slowly gotten to a place where he's starting to see a pattern. And the pattern with the main issues with the Black community is obviously an issue of single motherhood, absentee fathers, and a welfare system that's destroying them, right? That community from the inside out. And he announced a couple years back that he considers himself a men's rights activist, although we've never really had a chance to talk to him much. We had him on the show one time. I think that he could greatly benefit from seeing this conference. So we reached out to him to see if he would like to come, because maybe there's some stuff that he can learn, from us, and maybe we can learn some things from him. So I think that, Tommy is definitely an important figure. Chris Coles is a YouTuber that goes by the name Mr. Reagan. And Mr. Reagan started off essentially just making these kind of right-wing response videos to, leftist propaganda, or to the Young Turks or The View or whatever. And it was mostly just done for entertainment. But again, Chris Coles, or Mr. Reagan, he's a big fan of Girl Rights What. He understands that he's starting to get that the men's issues sort of dialogue is actually becoming more and more important. It's becoming more and more obvious over time that there's something to this. And I'm hoping that, him coming to the conference, even if he's just going to talk about his right-wing conservative views, the point is that he will be exposed to this conversation. But that's basically what Mr. Reagan does. He's a commentator. He especially did this great piece where he kind of, I wouldn't say exposed, because it was pretty much the info was out there, but he talked about how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is essentially a puppet that's being put in place by the Justice Democrats, and that they have like this highly socialist agenda. I mean, that should be obvious if you've been following it. But go check it out. They were set up by the Young Turks and all that. So, and then lastly, Elon Srolovics is the guy. He owns a company called eGuard Watches, and he is the one guy who put out this ad that was a counter to the Gillette ad that was about toxic masculinity. And he did a couple of really great ads. He is an actor, a director. He lives in Hollywood. He's in that scene. And I had him on the show and we talked about it. And he feels very passionately about these issues. So I think, in a place that's as hostile to his ideas, he should be with us and meeting some of the people over here. So.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I have a question for you. I noticed that there's a variety in some of the pricing for some of the tickets, and it sounds like you've changed some of the ticketing, the pricing and things like that. So my question is this. If you get a VIP pass, does that come with like a an Antifa hunting license or anything like that?
We are actually going to be doing. It's funny that you should mention that. It doesn't, unfortunately, but it's funny that you should mention that because we are doing on Monday. We are driving out to a gun range,
Nice.
and be shooting at targets and stuff. So there will be, I guess you could call it a kind of meditative practice, and but like the various prices will include, like, the VIP thing is basically like it gives you access to certain rooms. You get like a special dinner. There's going to be a cocktail with like the speakers and stuff. All the speakers are already VIPs, so people who buy the tickets can like get in and get a chance to talk to them and hang out with them. So
awesome. Now I'm looking at the ticket prices and things like that for Feed the Badger. I'm going to go back to the main page and I'm going to look at the schedule here. So talk to me a little bit about the schedule. Oh, apparently it says may change loading timetable. Let's find out what's going on with that. Hold on.
No problem. Yeah, it's still a work in progress because we haven't heard back from every speaker about what they're going to talk about.
Got it.
What times are best for them.
Okay. And the links for everybody watching this video or on the live stream, the links here will actually be in the description once this gets uploaded to YouTube. So just so we're on the same page there. Now let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the fundraiser for this event. I'm going to go ahead and switch screens a little bit so people can see the Feed the Badger fundraiser that's going on. And talk to me a little bit about that.
All right. So the thing is we're doing a fundraiser because what we're trying to like put together is actually, as far as the ICMI goes, it's absolutely historical. We've never tried to make it as big as this. We've never tried to have as many different kinds of speakers here as we have in the past. And we want this to be the most amazing experience, and try to get some of the best people. But the challenge is that some of the people we're trying to reach have been, they're in financial trouble. We want to try to take care of them. We can't afford to pay all the speakers. A lot of the speakers are doing this in terms of a speaking event. They're just doing it pro bono because they care about the issues. A lot of them are flying themselves out on their own dime, and we highly appreciate it. And we appreciate that they understand how important these issues are. But for some of these people, it's just impossible. For example, I was talking to you about this before we started the show. Jonathan Taylor, who had a really great YouTube channel called, I believe it was called, I'm like losing it here. It was basically like a voice for male students. That's what it was called. A voice for male students. He had a great channel. He was doing all this stuff about misandry in the education system. And I think the discussion around all the problems in academia is absolutely critical, right? And he was doing a lot of great work on that. And he has a cool website up now called Title IX for All. And we wanted to come to the conference. I was surprised that he hadn't been to one yet thus far. Come to find out that, it's just he can't afford it. He's on a shoestring budget himself. It's like most of these men's groups that are actually doing things in the real world, they are often beset with the most financial struggle because who the fuck cares about men, right? So we thought, well, we should like try to get him out here. And so we're going to try and fly Jonathan Taylor out, and we need to raise money for that. We want to try to, either take care of people's flight expenses, take care of their hotel expenses, so people are more comfortable while they're here. And so that's like the main reason why we're doing it. And by the way, if people can't donate directly or they feel like they should get something out of it, we also have on the main website, we also have virtual tickets. So people can buy virtual tickets, and essentially it'll give you access to the entire event via a live stream. We're not going to live stream it like for everyone, because if we did that, nobody would come to the conference. Right. But we live stream it for people who will pay, for a virtual ticket, which is a lot cheaper, and you get to see all the speakers and stuff. And we'll even take questions from the people that are watching virtually. So it'll be like as much like a conference experience as we can get. But yeah, so going back to the fundraiser, this is essentially so that you can take care of the people who are taking the time and making the effort to come out and be a part of this conference as speakers, as contributors. And I think that it's a very important. Another person.
Well, let me kind of interject right here too, because I think this is important to kind of underscore this point. The thing is that a lot of the guys who speak about these issues, regardless of what tribe of the manosphere that they're part of, they're targeted by social justice warriors and they're targeted by feminists. YouTube is demonetizing their channels. There are a lot of people out there who they're getting not only demonetized, they're getting banned off of social media. I personally have been banned off of Twitter, and my entire YouTube channel has been demonetized, which is why I stream on Twitch. So, you know, hashtag shill alert. If you guys have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to this channel, not just follow it, but you can subscribe to it. And that actually benefits this channel, and obviously it benefits me. So if that's something that you guys, you know, feel like you want to support my channel, this is one way you can do so, where you don't have to pay me anything. Amazon covers that. But the other side of this is that there are very many conservative personalities. There are very many anti-social justice warriors, very many anti-feminists, people who speak the truth from all over the manosphere. And these people are targeted. They're targeted in their real life. I mean, Sargon of Akkad, one of your speakers at this event, he was sued for defamation because it was, you know, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to drive him into poverty. Patreon banned him because of something he said elsewhere. So this isn't just like a couple personalities being demonetized or deplatformed. This is a top-down effort to silence dissent. And it is spearheaded by the left. It is spearheaded by big tech. And so when you look at the fundraiser for this event, or when you look at right-wing personalities, or you look at conservative personalities, or red pill personalities, regardless of which tribe in the manosphere they belong to, obviously supporting them financially is extremely useful. You know, Richard said he picked up my book. I really appreciate it. Xanamaru #1, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining. And also Excalibur Blade, earlier, he subscribed via Amazon Prime, so I appreciate that. But again, like I said, I think that these things are extremely important. They are extremely useful to help these people share their information. And I think that that's just kind of the interjection I wanted to make. So, you know, go ahead and jump into the other individual you wanted to discuss.
Oh, yeah, just briefly, Christoph Pekgaz. He's a Turkish guy, he immigrated here from Turkey to go to the University of Southern California. And he found that there was, you know, incredible injustice in college campuses. So he basically became an advocate to sort of criticize and examine Title IX stuff. And, you know, he's been doing a lot of great work over there. He's filed lots and lots of complaints on behalf of other people, other men that have been impacted negatively, in which case it would be considered a Title IX violation. And the way, of course, that most universities operate is that Title IX is only a problem if it affects women. And so he's pointing out their hypocrisy. And as a result, the University of Southern California has taken away all of his money. He gets a stipend, 30 grand a year, so that he can like eat and have a roof over his head while going to college, pursuing his PhD, and they took his money away. So he's basically like doing whatever he can to make ends meet. He's got like a GoFundMe or something going on. He's trying to like solve his problem. So we obviously want him to come down, and we need to fly him out and house him, because there's no way he can do it on his own. I mean, you know, the guy is struggling. So that's just another example of what I'm talking about. And you're absolutely right. People who advocate for men's issues, the more popular they become, the bigger a target that they become. And you know, it's I mean, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to let them be victimized? And I mean that when I say that, I mean like literally victimized, not in this, you know, bullshit way that the left always tries to frame it.
Well, that's because the left operates off of Alinsky's rules of radicals, or for radicals, I should say. And what that means is that they always accuse everybody else of what they themselves are actually doing. And you see this all over left-wing media and even some of the mainstream media as well. So there absolutely is that. But let's go ahead and move on from the fundraiser and kind of touch on things. But also, you bring up an interesting point in the about the fundraiser and about the gentleman who was, you were talking about doing the Title IX argument, because and again, this is a hashtag shill alert, but I can't avoid it because I just put this up today. On my website, misandrytoday.com, The appeals court rebukes Purdue for hiding likely anti-male bias. Now, this article originally, it comes from the College Fix, and Alexander Pease from UMass Boston originally wrote it. Check it out. The appellate court smacked down Purdue specifically because of their Title IX bias against men. It's a great ruling. If you read the article there, obviously check it out on misandrytoday.com. You can also check it out on College Fix. I have a link to it in the article, and you can actually read the court ruling as well. I mean, it's a fantastic ruling that definitely speaks in favor of men. So my little shill alert is over. Let's go ahead and move on. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in relation to the conference or any other aspect of it? Or you know?
I think that I basically touched on everything. I mean, like I said, well, to sort of reiterate what I was talking about before, a lot of the guests that we're going to be having on, they are all over the place politically, and they also have different views on, you know, sort of like gender and relationships. So there might be, you might go to the website and see some people where it's like, what is that person doing here? And we've had that happen. But, you know, the thing is that these people are interested in this discussion, and I think that ultimately, you know, the ball's in their court as to where they move on it, but maybe we can learn something from them. I think that more than likely, people who don't already know about this stuff are going to learn something from us. For example, we are hopefully, I think very highly likely, going to be getting on a guy called The Attractive Man, who operates a kind of PUAE website. And, you know, if you look at the videos on The Attractive Man's YouTube channel or their website, it just looks like typical kind of, you know, how to talk to girls, how to pick up chicks kind of stuff, right? And people would say, well, those aren't men's issues. And I would say not in the legal sense, but I think in a cultural sense, men can benefit. But more than that, far more than that, is that The Attractive Man there was no motive for him to take an interest in our content, and yet he did. And I think that is what says something. It means that, like we were talking about yesterday, men's issues, like men as a talking point, masculinity itself is becoming, or has already become, a mainstream conversation. So while it is a mainstream conversation, we cannot let the mainstream actually take control of that conversation, because they're going to do what Terry Crews did. They're going to make it about toxic masculinity. They're going to be making it about how can we blame men for this? How can we hold men accountable for this? How can we put all of the agency on men and none on women? And so, you know, we can't, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just not a productive conversation.
I agree with that entirely. And I think that, again, you know, whether we talk about PUAs or whether we talk about men going their own way, whether we talk about, you know, red pill tradcons, I mean, all these groups and more are different tribes of the manosphere. And, you know, just like we talked yesterday about how, you know, me being a permanent panelist on the Red Man group, it brings some diversity of thought to that conversation that they have. I think that the men's conference and Honey Badger Radio at some level are attempting to do the same thing. So I think that those things are definitely valid ethical pursuits to move forward with. And I think obviously, you know, and again, I have interest in this as well, but the reality is we all need to be supported, and we all need to be crossing our support with each other, you know, and we can focus on building bridges or we can focus on burning them down. And I think that in building the bridges, we're able to really get our message out there, and then people can discover that, holy shit, we're not alone. You know, a lot of times, I mean, I used to go to a website called, you know, MGTOW.com. And when guys would discover that website, you would see, like, they'd have like a forum for introductions. And in that introduction section, almost every post, at least the ones that I read, said, I thought I was alone. I thought it was just me. I thought it, you know, and the reality is that that's not the case at all. I mean, everybody's, I mean, I know there were some people in the chat that one person had said something about how the mainstream really won't pay attention to it. Honestly, I think they are. I think that the mainstream populace in the Western world is absolutely paying attention to those things. But what I think is happening is the mainstream media, the legacy media, they're doing everything they can to silence these things. And you see that they are acting in an antitrust fashion with big tech to silence voices like yours, like mine, like the Red Man groups. They're trying to take away from events like the International Conference on Men's Issues in Chicago, or the 21 convention that's going to be in Poland, or the next one in October that's going to be in Orlando. You know, there's a lot of things that are happening where everybody is trying to shut us down. And I say everybody, I mean top down. I think the general populace, if they understood who we were and what we were doing, I think we would get a lot more support. But again, through a combination of financial censoring, demonetization, tortious interference with business relationships that YouTube does, that we've seen from other people, and then combined with algorithmic censoring, you know, they're doing everything they can to censor us without absolutely outright doing so. But even like with Trump and with a lot of conservatives, we're seeing this censoring happen all over the place. I mean, YouTube is basically shut down millions of channels in the last year, and no one's talking about it. You know, we have a half a dozen voices to a dozen voices talking about this thing, but nobody is talking about this. Nobody's really discussing exactly how much of a pandemic this is when it comes to the idea of free speech and freedom of thought.
Absolutely. And you're right on the top down thing. This is exactly what the left does, because that's how they see progress. It has to be top down, and it has to be about, you know, silencing voices. And it's because they believe that words are violence. Therefore, violence is okay to use to silence people. And so, and when I say that, I know it sounds like, well, YouTube, you know, demonetizing you isn't violence. Well, I'm not making that argument. But my point is that they exercise it in that way because they can't get to you physically. So they try to ruin your life in any other way. And it is definitely all about who has the authority, who has the power. Well, I don't care about the rules. I don't care about principles. I don't care about the, you know, morality, because I know that this is the right thing to do and it's worth it. And so we're just going to remove you from the platform.
Right. Well, and I think there's another side of this as well, and that is that they are promoting, these large tech platforms are promoting propagandists that support the social justice bigoted narrative. And you see this all the time. Like, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I do browse Twitter occasionally, and you see this with promoted posts. There's, you know, outright misandry in these promoted posts. You see this in, you know, YouTube trending videos and things like that, where they're basically focusing on emasculating men, where they're sending a message that basically, you know, men are second-class citizens. They don't, you know, outright say that, but what they do is they ignore masculinity. And when you ignore positive masculinity, it's the same effect as emasculating men. It's like the drag queen shows that are happening, where they're trying to get children to be indoctrinated to become trans and to enter these drag shows.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you should bring that up, because this is kind of like an interesting segue. I watched a debate between Blair White, and do you guys know who Blair White is? You know who Blair White is, right? She was a trans woman MRA. Actually, she started out as an MRA. I don't think that she's kind of broadened from there, but she's still a pretty, I would say, right-wing, YouTuber, and we can get into what I mean by right-wing a little later, because there might be people who react to that in a negative way, and if you do, then you're falling for the exact propaganda that I've been trying to talk about all this time. But she was debating a guy named Vosh, who is a very far-left kind of like communist, YouTuber that he and they were talking about essentially he was just bringing her on to like call her a bigot and all this other shit, right? But what was really interesting was throughout their conversation, the topic of gender came up, because Blair White is a trans person, but she doesn't like all of this non-binary, gender non-conforming sort of blurring of the lines, right? And I can understand that, because trans people usually they go from one gender to another, and that means that if you're transitioning from one thing to another thing, then how can there be a spectrum, right? So they got into this argument about, but here's what was interesting. Blair White was actually trying to make the argument that being gay, being trans, or being sort of like gender atypical, or sexually atypical, like not just a heterosexual cisgender person, was something that you're just born with. This is just the way you are. And this other guy was calling that a kind of bigoted medicalization of sexuality, and he believed, and he was pushing this idea that the gender someone is, or their sexuality, is something that they can choose and should be able to choose. And what was blowing me away about that was years ago, that would have been something that the LGBT community would have been completely against, because if you conclude that your sexuality is chosen, like you could just be gay or be bi or whatever, then that would mean that it can be sort of like conditioned out of you by someone who wanted to, like your parents. Like, it just, we'll go with a straw man example. If you have like some, you know, super fundamentalist religious parents that don't want you to be gay, then like the idea that they would send you to a camp where they make you straight or they pray the gay away becomes a valid argument, whereas before it would have been something that you just have to live with, right?
Right. Well, and I think that one of my biggest concerns with this entire ideology, I mean, other than the obvious, is that they're indoctrinating children. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's kind of, I'm going to touch on that just for a second. Yeah. Kind of move on. So you can't vote as a citizen in the United States until you're 18. Mm-hmm. You can't own a firearm until you're 18. You can't get a concealed carry for a pistol until you're 21. You can't buy alcohol until you're 21. You can't join the military until you're 18. You can't drive a car until you're 16, and if you get a graduated license, which many states are doing, you can't even get a full driver's license till you're 18. Children under 16 in the majority of states in the United States are unable by law to consent to sexual intercourse or sexual intimacy. In some states, I believe it goes as young as 14, but you know, brothers and sisters are still, you know, off limits, except in probably Arkansas. But I think that the idea here is that, yeah, if you're mentally incapacitated and you're unable to make decisions for yourself, you're not considered competent, and you can't consent to sexual interaction. Yet at the same side, when everybody's talking about this, and when this entire conversation is structured around this entire conversation, all these facts are ignored when it comes to trans indoctrination. The other thing that's ignored about this, and this is something that I talk about when I discuss child abuse in family law, is that the trans indoctrination is terrifyingly similar to the child grooming techniques of actual convicted child abusers. And there have been studies on the techniques that have been used. Now, I'm not saying that trans people are abusers or not abusers or anything like that. I don't want anybody to come to any kind of conclusions and false flag my video, right? But what I am saying is that maybe this is a conversation the mainstream needs to have. Maybe when we start talking about some of these issues, maybe we need to start talking about the verifiable facts and the observable realities of what's really going on. Because our children are our future, and we need to make sure that we are protecting that future and our legacy. And I'm not even just discussing like your children or my children. I don't even know if you're a parent or not, but I'm discussing children in general, you know? And I think that this idea that we're doing this top-down indoctrination in academia and this top-down indoctrination at the local library systems, and we are basically, I mean, there was a kid, Desmond is Amazing. Yeah, Desmond is Amazing was doing basically a soft porn striptease in a New York City gay bar that was only allowed 21 and over adults. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they had to leave their phones at the door. What does that tell you about how safe that place is for children? I mean, how is it that it is socially acceptable for a young child to be in a 21-year-old and older establishment when that's not normally accepted for heterosexual children? What does that tell you? I mean, that creates not only two different classes of people, but obviously it creates two different classes of children. And there are a lot of other issues around this issue. Obviously, it's a hot button topic. I don't necessarily want to dive that far in, but those are just some things I want people to be thinking about. Because when we have this conversation, it's all about feelings and it's never about facts. And when we talk about the facts and we talk about mental health and we talk about a lot of these things that are associated with it, children should be allowed to be children. They should not be sexually indoctrinated, whether as a heterosexual or whether as a homosexual or as a transsexual or anything else. Children's sexuality is going to exhibit itself however it exhibits itself. But we don't need adults grooming children, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Educating people who are not the child's parents, educating children on sex and sexuality before puberty. That is, to me, that's just creepy as shit. And it kind of cries of grooming. Like, did you know that? Do you remember Queer Kid Stuff? That YouTube channel, Queer Kid Stuff?
No, I don't follow the LBGT YouTube. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. It's not that I follow it either. It's just something that I've seen people responding to. So Queer Kid Stuff was like this YouTube channel it's still around that does these, like, it looks like a Mr. Rogers kind of children's show, and it's run by this I think it's a lesbian woman named Leslie who plays like a ukulele, and she sings these songs, and she uses this teddy bear, and it's very creepy, right? And it's about teaching children about sexuality, but specifically about queerness, drag queens, trans people, etc. Not about heterosexuality, just about non sort of atypical sexuality. And that wouldn't be a problem because there's creepy, weird shit on YouTube all over the place. But what is troubling is that she actually had a spot on and did a TED talk on her channel, and her whole approach was, and this is the thing that a lot of these people on this sort of like lefty YouTube and lefty sphere of the internet in general, they all push for, they use education to get to whatever their agendas are.
Well, let's stop right there though. Let's stop right there. That's not education, okay? I mean, no, I can smell the bullshit through my headphones.
No, but what I'm saying is that that's the method that they use. So what they want, and this is more top-down stuff, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is that's the pretense. The problem that you have is, and I'm just going to do a quick interjection here because this just frustrates me. I know you and I are on the same page, but for anybody that's out there, this is not education. This is indoctrination masquerading as education. It's a pretense. Okay, it's completely dishonest and it's unethical. You want to educate children about knowledge, provide them the entire amount of knowledge on the subject. Don't just cherry pick what you want to teach and then call it education when the reality is all you're trying to do is indoctrinate. So, and sorry about that, but anyway, go on.
It's okay, but like what I'm getting at is that I think that this has been picked up, and it has been for like probably 50 years or so, where our public education system, and probably a lot of private ones as well, but I'm going to go with public because I know that's a safe bet. It is indoctrination, and it's just about to what degree do they push their belief systems onto people. This is the reason why the left is such a big fan of free college, free school, because they want to indoctrinate the next generation. I mean, it's all about that, and it's all about this idea that education is where the authority is. We are the authority on knowledge and wisdom and morality, and we're going to use the education system to tell people what they should believe. And like, look at it in the bigger picture too. Take a father out of the home, which is what the feminists have been doing for years now. So there's no father in the home. The mother is raising her children by herself. Obviously, she can't do that even with the welfare check she gets. So she sends her kids to some kind of program, preschool, Head Start, daycare, whatever, as early as she can, because she can't do all of her shit at the same time. And obviously she can't get her shit together so that she can raise her kids without, additional help from the state or whatever. So those kids go into an education system as early as possible, and at every step they are surrounded by feminist women from the moment they get into daycare to the moment they leave university. And all of them put a focus on the importance of education and how that's going to make your life so much easier, and how you have to listen to your teachers and that they know what's best for you. And so when you come out of it, no wonder you're a wreck and you have like these left-wing feminist views, because the whole thing has been coming from the entire time, and they've primed the home for that from the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. So now, one of the things that we talked about before the stream, you said you wanted to talk about the kind of the left-right dichotomy, and how your views have evolved. Let's shift gears and touch on that. We've got probably about another 15 minutes or so before we open up any Q&A, if there is any. But yeah, I'd like to at least touch on that, because I think that's an important conversation to have as well. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what I've been thinking. I talk about this a lot on my own channel, and I bring it up sometimes on HBR. But HBR tries not to be political in terms of like choosing a side. But I have come to the conclusion that I don't think you can do that. So let me explain. I had Lucien Valsan, who is a great guy. He's been doing men's rights for a while, and lately he's been his conversation. Although he believes very strongly in men's rights, his conversation has shifted to talk more about essentially being non-leftist. And I asked him out of curiosity. I said, "Can an MRA be left-wing?" And he just, like, without skipping a beat, he said no. And that confirmed or solidified my suspicions for a while, because I thought this guy seemed pretty knowledgeable on left-right politics. So this is what I'm thinking. I've seen a lot of people talking about politics online, from Jordan Peterson to Dave Rubin to Ben Shapiro to whoever, name your pundit, okay? And I think that most of them, if not all of them, get it wrong. So I want to tell you what I have concluded. Okay, number one, and first off, the left is responsible for this, and the right is partly responsible because they went along with it, because they went along with this dichotomy, and they didn't challenge it. Number one, being on the left and being liberal are not the same. Though they're not even compatible. They're not even close. If a leftist tells you that they're liberal, they're lying, or they don't know what they're talking about. That's number one. The reason why is because the left doesn't really care about liberalism. That should be obvious. They're not for free speech. They're not for freedom of religion. They're not for freedom of association. They're not for, people doing whatever they want. They don't even want women doing whatever they want. Like, if a woman wants to stay home and be a housewife, they hate that. Okay. So they're not liberal at all. That's one right off the bat. The right and conservatives are also not the same. I think that this is what I've concluded. Being on the left or being on the right is basically all about how much power should the state have and in what places should that power be used. And it's got nothing to do with morality. It's got nothing to do with your thoughts on gay marriage. It's got nothing to do with women. It's got nothing to do with black people. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just, how much power should government have over people? How much should they be the parent? And where should that power be at? That's what I've concluded. If you're on the right, that means that you don't want the government in your life. That's it. It's not a moral statement. It's just that. You don't want them in your shit. If you're on the left, you think that the government is good and that there should be more of it because people need it. And it's mainly because you don't trust other human beings to be decent. That's why you want it to be a centralized in the state. If you're I also believe that you can be conservative and liberal at the same time. And I know it sounds weird, but I think most people are. I think that they are conservative on some things and liberal on other things, because it's basically just, you're just looking at people's views on, this is where, I guess, views on things like ethics and, social issues and cultural limits exist. So this is what I've been thinking about a lot, and this is important because the left has poisoned the language on all of this stuff. They want to be the party of liberalism because it sounds nice, but it's not what they really believe, and this is why they constantly want to frame the right as racist and sexist and homophobic, etc. But if you really look at what people do within those two sides, the right just doesn't want to celebrate you for being gay or kiss your ass for Black History Month. They're okay with you existing, but they don't want to go out of their way to celebrate it, and they should have to do that.
And let's be real, right? During the civil rights era, Dr. Martin Luther King said that he was hoping for a time when a man or a woman would be judged by the content of their character rather than by the color of their skin. And I would add, or by their sexual affiliation, right?
or their gender or
Right.
whatever. Right.
Exactly. The content of their character is where it should stop. And the issue that I have with left-wing / progressive policies is that they want equality of opportunity, but they also want equality of outcome. What they don't want is equality of performance. They don't want to work. They don't want to earn what they have. They don't want to, basically function on a merit-based system. The idea of civil rights originally was just to get everybody on the same playing field. And whoever performed better was those who succeeded. And those who didn't perform as well didn't get the success that the other people got. But what they did get was the success they deserved. And that's a problem because we live in a consumerist society where everybody wants everything, but nobody wants to work for it. And everybody has been indoctrinated into this idea that they'll be happier if they have that Apple product. They'll be happier if they buy that particular car. They'll be happier if they wear the brand of clothing, or they live in a certain neighborhood, or they have the certain outward validation from some purchase. And they forgot that at the end of the day, the most important validation that we have or need should be the validation of our loved ones near us, should be our inner social circle. And I'm not talking about our Facebook friends or our Twitter followers or our YouTube subscribers. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people we see in the real world, the people we can, look at across the table while we share a meal, the people we play, football with, at the park, or we throw a Frisbee with, or the people that we travel with. Those are the people that matter. And their opinions should be worth more than somebody's online opinion, or some guy who can't stand up for his country, so he has to take a knee. So I think that at the end of the day, when we have these conversations and when we talk about these things, we really do need to be focusing on the content of one's character, the ethics, the professionalism, the things that come up, rather than this idea that, well, you have a Mexican last name, so therefore you should be more valuable than somebody else. Or, you're female, so you should be more valuable than the next person. Or you are Caucasian, so therefore you're somehow less valuable. Again, it's all hypocrisy. And what they do is they use all these different things to move the goalpost, because they refuse to talk about the one thing that matters, the content of one's character. So at the end of the day, I agree with that wholeheartedly. So with that said, is there anything that you want to kind of end this conversation on before we switch over to Q&A?
Well, yeah, I just want to close out by saying this is what the left does. So they use language to get their way. So ultimately, they have their goals, and that is complete control over society. They don't care how they do it, and everything is just a tool. Going back to, and I'll give you some examples, going back to that conversation between Vosh and Blair White, when I heard him say, we can't be going down this road of what he called, I think it was essentially this appeal to medicine as a means by which to define a trans person. Because if you do that, then people can't choose, and then we have to go along with that narrative. So basically what he was saying is the idea that a person is only trans by virtue of their biology and their desire to, like their brain chemistry and all the science behind gender dysphoria. The issue with that is that it's not convenient to us. If it's got to be convenient, we have to be able to use it to get our way, which means I don't actually care about trans people. It means I care about our agenda and how we get there. Okay. And so going back to Black Lives Matter as another example, if you go to the Black Lives Matter website, and you actually look what they're about, they're not about blacks, and they're not about black men, even though it's the deaths of black men that actually created Black Lives Matter. But they are an intersectional feminist organization that prioritizes, in their own words, women over men. But what does that mean? Ultimately, it doesn't mean shit, because they just want control, and they will use whatever it takes to get it. So this isn't even about the people that they claim it's actually about, because at the end of the day, they're going to ruin everyone's lives if they get their way. I had one other example. It's all about tools. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a tool of the left. You know, Black Lives Matter is a tool. Antifa, they're tools. They're run by feminists. The feminists want power. That's all they want. That's all they've ever wanted. So in closing, what I'm saying is, don't let the left tell you that they're liberal. Don't let people on the right that talk about the left claim that they're liberals. Like Candace Owens uses the wrong language. Ben Shapiro uses the wrong language. Joe Rogan uses it. They all use the wrong language. They are the left. They are not liberals. They will never be liberals because they'd have to stop being on the left. The left is not liberal. It never was, and it will never be. So it has to end. Like the language war we are losing is what I'm getting at, and it's by design. It's by design. So that's basically my final thoughts on that.
Right on. So I'm looking at the chat right now, and I see a viewer, Zeranx. If I destroyed your name, I apologize. It says Sargon put out a video recently where he discussed some aspects of progressives and conservatives, though I don't remember if he used those terms. Anyway, he said progressives are driven by results, whereas conservatives are focused on procedure. Being focused on results allows for tinkering of procedure to the point that you don't care what procedure is good so long as the result/outcome is reached. Procedure normalizes things for all, and the result is what is borne out from. And I go. The rest of it's cut off, which is fine. Let me touch on that real quick. It's not quite a question, but let me touch on that real quick. What we're talking about is, in layman's terms, is the ends justifying the means. Mm-hmm. When you have to use the ends to justify the means, you are not acting in an ethical fashion. Now, obviously, in times of war, things are a little bit different, but during peacetime, that is an absolute consideration that any ethical individual should consider making. So with that said, let's turn it over to Q&A, and let's do this. So if you have a question and you're in the Twitch chat, now obviously if you're on Roku or you're on Twitch TV, you may not be able to do this. I'm not sure. It depends on your TV. But if you're on a mobile or you're on a PC like a laptop or a Mac machine, go ahead and put question in brackets and then what your question is and who the question is to. Try to only ask single part questions one at a time. That way other people can get a chance to ask questions if they have it. But also this gives us an opportunity to ask the question. So if you have follow along questions, definitely do that as well. Now, originally on my channel on the lower left-hand side, you might see this little icon that appears occasionally, and you'll see something that floats up across the screen called the Bukkake Chokeslam. Those are little points that I have for Twitch for people to ask questions through Streamlabs, but I don't have Streamlabs working correctly right now, so I'm not going to be doing any of the Streamlabs questions. So save your Bukkake Chokeslams for when those things work, and then let's go to Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask them now, please.
Okay.
With that said, while people are asking questions, go ahead and give me some feedback on what this viewer's statement currently was. Oh,
on Zeranx's statement here?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I'm not sure that progressives and conservatives is not a bad. I think those terms are okay. I think that ultimately there's the reason why, while I don't believe that conservatives are necessarily right wing, there is overlap, and I can give you some examples of why this is. Because my wife, we have a lot of talks about it. She didn't agree with me when I originally brought this up. But I think that that's a great point. I think that in general, Sargon is right, and I think he's learning this. Like, I'll give you another example. I've been hearing people say, and Rebecca Watson, if you remember the days of old Atheism Plus, she actually made a video about this, responding. But people conflate the far right with Nazis. And I'm going to say that this is also incorrect. This is an example of what I'm talking about. This is the left fucking with language. It's okay if I say that word on your stream, right? Is that
only today?
Okay, only today. Yeah. The Nazis were not right wing, and not just because in the name it says National Socialist Workers Party. It's not just that. It's in the way that the Nazis organized their nation. The only difference between the Nazis and the communists was that the Nazis were national socialists and the communists were international socialists. There's a reason why they fought each other. It is the same reason that a lot of left-wingers fight each other on YouTube or on the internet over their sort of like pet project ideologies. Like people who engage in identity politics tend to be on the left, and they always believe that their identity politics, their purse puppies, are more important than other people, so they end up fighting each other. So far right is not a Nazi. Far right is something like an ANCAP or a libertarian or something. Minarchist is a good example. So think about it that way, okay? If this is something, my wife was like, but I don't get it, like, you know, and we've talked about this a few times. So the Nazis are not far right. Don't let them do that. This is what I'm saying. Don't let them do that because it's a lie. It's incorrect. Another one is the alt-right. They're not right-wing either. Even though they call themselves an alt-right, they're not, because if you look at what they're about, it's no different from what Louis Farrakhan is about. Is Louis Farrakhan right-wing? So like this is what I'm talking about. It's about how do they want to organize society. You know, Richard Spencer was part of the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement wasn't right-wing, was it?
I didn't know that. Holy shit, are you serious?
Yeah, he absolutely was. He was part of the movement. So like the guy is left wing. The only difference is that he's a left winger that thinks that white people, whatever the fuck that means, should have their own ethno state. Well, actually, Black Lives Matter. There was at MythCon. Remember that girl that was debating with some black guy that was like a Black Lives Matter person, the one that cut Bernie Sanders. Well, I talked to her and I said, well, what is it that you ultimately want? And she said, Pan-African socialism. Sounds like an ethno state to me. And so they both want the same thing. The only difference is Richard Spencer wants it for white people and she wants it for black people.
Well, so let's touch on that real quick and debunk that. Sure. If anybody wants to know how ethno states end, look at Japan.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. Like, if that's what you want to do and people want to voluntarily go live in your ethno state and you're not hurting anyone to go build it, I say go for it. I don't care. But ultimately, it's the thing I take issue is the way that we talk about it, because what the left has done is they've created a situation where the only time a totalitarian socialist country becomes right-wing is if it's racist and it's run by white people. And being racist and adding that to socialism, even though I don't think Richard Spencer is racist, because I think there's a difference between being a white nationalist and being a white supremacist. I think those are different, in the same way that being a black nationalist and being a black supremacist are different. But like adding racism from whites towards whatever group does not make it a right-wing ideology. And I feel really strongly about that because, you know, I don't want them to get away with it. And we have to call it what it is. That way more people will see that all of this shit that people are complaining about, most of it comes from the left. Okay, there's a question in the chat now.
I see it. All right, so the question is from IronCry_01. It's DDJ. Do you think that the left will go so far to the point of actually start forcing their agenda with extreme physical force to the point of the USA having a second civil war? Honestly, I think that's absolutely a concern. If you look at the red flag laws across the United States were patterned after the domestic violence civil protection order. So the idea of taking a person's gun rights away on basis of allegation alone. There are many gun rights advocates that mirror my words when it comes to this sort of thing. And this is something that I've been talking about since 2017 in the context of domestic violence civil protection orders. And that is, they violate men's due process rights. Now, I say specifically men, but there are women rarely who do get domestic violence protection orders placed against them. I do know some of them. And what ends up happening is that these individuals are never charged with a crime. They're accused of a crime, not in a criminal court, but in a civil court setting, in a family court setting. And in this red flag law scenario, they are accused of a crime in a civil setting. They don't have a right to an attorney. They don't have a right to cross-examine their witnesses. I've actually talked about this in a prior video about the origins of red flag laws. You can check and look for it on my channel on YouTube and on BitChute and take a look at it. I go into detail with this, but that's one small aspect of it. The other small aspect here is that the left has foot soldiers on the ground right now in the form of Antifa. And I did a series called Antifa Exposed on my YouTube channel where I went into detail and I showed where MoveOn.org, where the Ford Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, where the Southern Poverty Law Center, they are all funding Antifa. And I demonstrated it in black and white. Then on top of that, you have Antifa that are working with the Mexican drug cartels to try to ferry illegal immigrants across our southern border. Now, many of these immigrants are from Africa. Some of them are members of ISIS. Some of them are terrorists. The Department of Homeland Security has actually discussed this. I went through a video called "The Facts That Nancy Pelosi Ignores," where I actually dissect the Department of Homeland Security's report on the southern border and talk about the terrorism and basically things that we're opening up our country to, because these people are allowed to cross the border. But the thing that hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, and I forget right off the top of my head which video I did a video about how the left is in sanctuary cities. They are allowing these ghost gun manufacturing facilities to exist. I know that the federal government, I think it was the DEA and ATF, they shut a few of them down in Los Angeles and in that area. And I think that there have been a couple that have been shut down elsewhere. Now, I'm not talking about 3D printed guns. I'm talking about ghost guns. These are guns that are being manufactured by cartel members who are being supported financially and legally by the left. You hear about these people talk about open borders all the time. These people are trying to foment civil war. You ever wonder why all the families who get victimized by the illegal immigrants are being shunted to the side, and why the left and the mainstream media doesn't want to talk to them, or why an illegal immigrant will sexually assault somebody and there's no hashtag Me Too movement? The feminists are nowhere to be found. That's a concern. Or why is it when Andy No got assaulted in Portland, the LGBT organizations victim blamed him because he was assaulted? And now there are news articles coming out. I read one this morning about where they can demonstrate that Antifa, and this is based on arrest records, is mostly a white movement. It's a communist movement. They don't care about minorities. I know this. I'm Latino. They don't care about minorities. They don't care if you're African American. They don't care if you're male or female or whatever. They will harass and they will threaten you. This is political terrorism, is what this is. Look at what they're doing to the Fourth Estate. Look at how they've attempted to deperson Alex Jones and InfoWars. Look at how they are attempting to deplatform all sorts of voices who speak out against this bigotry. And then let's not even start with the fact that big tech has been acting in an antitrust fashion across the board. I mean, we're talking about Facebook right now, and everybody's like, well, Facebook is doing all these bad things. You think they're doing this in a vacuum?
No, yeah, no.
The CEO, the CEO from Patreon, the CEO from Apple, the CEO from Google, they've all said, hey, we work together. We're doing this. We're sharing information. We are deplatforming people together. They might as well have just come right out and say, we are committing antitrust violations together. The reality is this. In the United States, we have the Constitution. And under the First Amendment of the Constitution, we have a right to freedom of speech. Any organization that has a hate speech policy, whether it is an online platform, social media, it doesn't matter what it is, they're anti-American. Now, I have often criticized big tech for their anti-American stance and basically saying that they're enemies of the people, and I believe that they are. And a lot of people are like, well, they're private companies. They can do what they want. Not quite. Let me tell you, if you go to a baseball game in a baseball stadium, or you go shopping in a shopping mall, or you go into a place where the public has some sort of access to it, the law defines this as a place of public accommodation. And what that means is that the private owners of this place of public accommodation, as defined by the United States Supreme Court, has to follow the Constitution. They cannot discriminate against you. And a lot of people, and I know Tim Pool makes this mistake as well, where they say, look, here's the thing. It's political discrimination. No, it's not. It is national origin discrimination. National origin discrimination is a violation of federal civil rights law in every state, in every county, in every city in the country. It is codified under 1983. Anybody who gets assaulted for wearing a MAGA hat or for wearing, the flag or the Betsy Ross, gear, that's anti-American. Those people who are doing that, those are hate crimes. Their hate crimes are violation of civil rights law. But when we talk about big tech, I know I kind of tangented a little bit. When we talk about big tech, a lot of these lawsuits that are coming out, they are rightly calling out these big tech platforms for lack of freedom of speech. And they are rightly calling out these platforms for fraud. Because if you look at Facebook, you look at YouTube, you look at Google and all these other places, they advertise that they are free speech platforms. YouTube now in their About section says that they should never be any kind of gatekeepers or anything like that. We all know that's all bullshit. I mean, Google thinks it's above the law because Sundar Pichai lied under oath to Congress, and yet nobody's holding him accountable. So is there going to be a civil war? Possibly. But I'll tell you this, it's not going to be a very long civil war. But what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to continue to pass these draconian laws. It'll start in leftist strongholds first. Obviously, in Colorado, there's red flag laws. There's a lot of gun rights limiting in California. Some of this is starting to happen in Seattle, though there's some pushback for it, or I should say Washington State. New York is having issues with this. Chicago has severe gun right limitations, and yet, they're like one of the murder capitals of the country. So when it comes to this type of thing, there will be physical force, but it won't be the right going after the left. It'll be the left going after the right, and the right will get sick of it, and they will take up arms. And then they will deal with it. Now, the government has some opportunities to deal with this, but I mean, I spoke about civil war a year ago, and other YouTube personalities had been talking about this 6 or 7 months ago. And, obviously the voices here have been pretty quiet on that front, but I think we're closer to civil war than ever. I don't want to see it, but unfortunately, if these left-wing progressive ideologies continue, and this top-down funding for these major organizations to terrorist groups like Antifa and to illegal immigrants and people who are helping funding these cartels, whether they know it or not, in the name of social justice, that's going to push us towards civil war.
I think the left wants it too. I think they've been pushing for it for a while.
They absolutely been pushing for it because they're communists, and communism cannot survive without some sort of armed revolution. They all talk about it. It's one of the part of every Antifa manifesto that I've ever read.
Yep. So, and the funniest part though is that these are all, as Yuri Bezmenov said, useful idiots, because all these people that are doing all this stuff and they think it's for social justice, once they put, if they get their way, they will also be lined up and shot. So they are useful idiots, to put it bluntly.
I agree. Iron Cry 001 or 01, I should say. He also asks, DDJ, why hasn't anyone's, I'm going to say hasn't here, just going to go and substitute that in, anyone started a social media platform that is not like Twitter or Facebook, etc.? I'm sure some people are sick of dealing with using these left-wing social media platforms. Well, let me kind of explain a little bit about the social media platforms that are out there. And this is something that a lot of mainstream personalities don't realize. This includes some personalities on YouTube. And that is that Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, they manipulate the algorithm so that trending subjects no longer trend. That, there's bots all over Twitter. They're, basically brigade certain posts and they promote other posts. YouTube and Facebook have also admitted to this sort of behavior. The reality is that we do have some of these platforms. We have Gab.com, and I know a lot of people are like, well, but Gab has issues with, basically certain types of anime porn that depicts underage anime people, so they're not a First Amendment platform. Well, the reality is that Gab actually had to walk a fine legal line, and their legal team made a decision about that, and so they backed away from it. We also have BitChute.com. While it doesn't allow adult content on their platform, BitChute is actually a viable alternative, and the more people that use it, the better it scales. And a lot of people are starting to put their content on BitChute. I use it as an alternative myself to YouTube, and I do have a BitChute channel as well, hashtag shill alert. And then you have minds.com. The nice thing about Minds is if you have a video that's under 20 minutes, you can put that up there. It's a definite Facebook alternative, and there are a lot of people using it. Now, obviously, when you get on these platforms, there's a lot of racist vitriol and things like that. There's a lot of trolling, right? It's a lot of kids that just, they troll because they can do it, and they just want to do it to get it out of their system, and they move on with their day. And the sad part about it is that most of the hate speech that the left complains about, they just do it on these platforms just to wind up the left because the left can't handle it. And then they out themselves, and then they're like, oh, got another one. So do you want to weigh in on that question, Brian?
Well, yeah, I mean, everything that you said, we know that there are alternatives out there, but there is a bit of a downside. The downside is that I wouldn't want people to move into separate camps and form little bubbles outside, because the people that I want to reach are the normies. I want to reach the people who are either politically unaffiliated, they don't know, they're kind of like figuring this stuff out, but they just need like a nudge, or they just need somebody to reach out to them and say, hey, here's a red pill or whatever. And I think that if there's we definitely have a presence on Minds. We have a presence on Gab. I'm using the Dissenter browser right now to talk to you. But we also still use Facebook and YouTube, because if we completely unplug ourselves, I think that we run the risk of essentially like forming a little bubble, and the people that we want to get to may never find us, because, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, that they are the largest platforms. They are where most people are. And most people is who we're trying to reach. So it's a bit of a catch-22. But I agree with everything you said. It would be great if we had Ironcry specifically said a social media platform that is not like Twitter or Facebook. When you say that, do you mean not like Twitter or Facebook in terms of its politics, or in terms of its features? Because like a completely new type of social media platform could be cool if you got a lot of people to go there. There's also a website. Have you ever heard of MeWe?
No, that just sounds like what a toddler might tell you that they have to do when they're a little desperate.
Yeah, no, it's MeWe, which is basically like, me and we, like us. And it's also like a kind of Facebook type of social media website, but it's like completely completely free speech. Like you can post whatever you want. You can put porn on there, whatever. But it's like that. It's Facebook though. And the thing is that MeWe is okay, but not a lot of people know about it. So there's mostly just porn on it, and I'm on there, but I don't see a lot of traffic. And I guess that's the challenge is, everyone knows Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Very few people know about BitChute and Minds and Gab and vid.me and
DLive.
Yeah, DLive. Yeah. Is another one. Although that one, it could grow because PewDiePie moved over there.
Right.
But that's what it would take. Like it would almost take an exodus of people who have enormous platforms and big giant followings and the followers actually go there. But that's what you would need. You need something that would challenge it at that level. And I guess on the one hand, I completely agree. We should be using these platforms. We should be prioritizing them. But on the other hand, I don't think we should completely abandon our other ones, because we need to reach people that otherwise wouldn't go there.
Right. And I'm not saying that anybody should abandon anything, but I definitely think that we do need to diversify our platforms. That's why I developed misandrytoday.com, is so that, people who want to find me can. They don't have to worry about not knowing when my video gets uploaded, or not knowing when I have something to say. They can go to my website and they can find me, and they can find all my social media contacts there as well. So I think that that's one of the advantages there, in addition to that. Now, let's go on to the next question. Zeranx asks, DDJ, I've heard of a law that allows for owning guns made privately, so as long as they're not taken outside the home. Do you know about that law and what it's called? Honestly, I don't. I've heard about it. I've heard about this idea that you can own guns as long as they're kept inside your home. I think they're talking more like gun registration. But honestly, I would probably talk to somebody who has a little bit more knowledge about the legalities of firearms than I do. I know a little bit about firearms, as far as the legality is concerned, but I'm not a firearms legal expert. Is that something you know anything about, Brian?
No, I'm afraid I don't, but I know, well, I could probably find out. But I live in Chicago, so I never even bother to look at gun laws. So, because
everybody using guns in Chicago, they don't care about the law either. So there's that.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, I think we're at a good stopping point. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Everybody, thank you for watching today. Brian Martinez, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you being here on behalf of the International Conference on Men's Issues and Honey Badger Radio. Is there anything you'd like to leave us on today?
Well, I mean, like I said, just go to ICMI.info, check it out. I want to make this the biggest men's conference ever. And here's the thing. Okay, this is what I'll leave it at. And I was saying this before, all of these discussions that people are having about politics online, whether they're talking about the 2020 presidential race, whether they're talking about, systemic racism, or they're debunking the systemic racism, whether they're talking about misogyny and like the women's soccer team and representation, or they're talking about a black Little Mermaid, whatever it is that you're talking about, I think that what we are experiencing in terms of this kind of late stage United States, yes, I do think that we're in the, we're at the beginnings of like the fall of the U.S. because of all of this that's going on. These people calling for civil war and violence and all of this shit. Men's issues, men are the solution to this problem. Men that have their they realize that because look, if men just like woke up tomorrow and they all collectively said, you know what, fuck this shit, I'm gonna fix everything, we would get it done. Like, oh, this would be over with. But we can't. What we're working with is a lot of broken men that have been broken over several decades of feminist indoctrination, of leftist indoctrination, of removing fathers from the home, of single mothers raised on the welfare state that are also themselves ruined, and then those women having children that are therefore ruined. Men that go into gangs, they're more likely to go into prison, they're more likely to commit suicide. The girls are more likely to hit puberty earlier, and then they're more likely to become single mothers themselves, and then like all of this other stuff. If we can, and all you got to do, if you don't believe me, just look at what's happening in the black community. Just look at that, and then that will be everybody in like 40 years. Everybody in 40 years. That's not far away. Okay, that's like one generation, and that is the linchpin. Is men. And so we have to address we should address the male issues conversation for its own sake. But if you really can't be motivated enough by that on its own, I don't know why you're here, but if for whatever reason you think you need more, also recognize that without strong men that are that we have compassion for, that we want to help, that we want to treat fairly in the courts, that we want to encourage positive masculinity. I mean, just masculinity itself, which is positive. Don't buy any of the bullshit about toxic masculinity, because most people engaging what feminists call toxic masculinity are actually acting like women, but just in men's bodies. If you care about those things and you realize that the ICMI and these men's issues discussions are actually integral to every other political discussion, to every other political talking point, especially when it comes to identity politics, because every form of identity politics that the left brings up is intended to distract from men's issues. Because they are men's issues. They're not black issues or gay issues or trans issues, or men's issues.
Right. Well, thank you again, Brian, for coming by today and having a conversation with us about these things. And everybody, be sure to check out the ICMI rather 2019 fundraiser, which is will be a link in the description of this video when it gets uploaded. And check out the International Conference on Men's Issues 2019 in Chicago. Again, there'll be links to that as well as in the description. And of course, check out misandrytoday.com, my newly updated online news magazine. And if you are a viewer and also a YouTuber and you're interested in contributing to the online magazine at misandrytoday.com, feel free to reach out to me. There is room for contributors if you want your voice to be shared. Also, if you want to have a conversation with me on a live stream, now that DDJ's Inferno is back online on Sundays, definitely reach out to me via email at misandry.happens@gmail.com. And Iron Cry, you are very welcome, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.